In his Sermon on the Mount, Jesus of Nazareth exhorts us to love not only our neighbors, but to love our enemies, and to pray for those who persecute us, to be merciful as our God is merciful, to forgive others as God forgives us.
A month ago, I posted a video asking Christians if they could see Jesus Christ deporting people, and that video reached 130,000 Instagram users. I assumed that most believers would agree that Jesus would not be in favor of Trump's dehumanizing opinions regarding migrants, but I was very wrong. The comment section was filled with Bible scriptures used to justify their political beliefs, and it took me by surprise because I didn't realize how many Christians were unchristian. Several people wanted to remind me that God will only let some into heaven and cast the rest of the sinners to hell. At first, you wonder what the correlation is between this religious belief and the reality of immigration, but then it just clicks. They are saying that heaven has border control and those filthy sinners can't cross because God doesn't want them to. Hell, some of them are saying that Jesus deported fallen angels from heaven. And yeah, they mean exactly what you think. MAGA Christians are comparing migrants to fallen angels now. That was only one type of comment that I received. I had others utilizing scripture to tell me Jesus would want to follow the laws of the land and that he wouldn't be like those people who cross a border illegally and commit crimes like murder, SA, and child and drug trafficking. Some people even said that Adam and Eve got deported from the Garden of Eden, so I guess that answers that question. According to these people, I know nothing about Christianity or the Bible. Even when I tell them that I was once religious, they tell me it means nothing considering I am no longer a part of the church. But I strongly disagree, because the church was my entire life.
Your back is out. There's no...
It's difficult looking back at some of my church memories because they were not all that bad. I encountered some incredible people that drastically transformed my life, and even though I no longer talk to most of them, I won't deny my appreciation of those who genuinely helped me. 5 years after leaving the church, I am fortunate enough to have a few people who support my decision. Some of them are even on the same journey of healing as I am. I found genuine friendships that are very rare to find, and if it wasn't for my experiences, I probably wouldn't have found them. I'm not a firm believer of things happen for a reason, but for this, I will make the exception. They really changed my life. Because of these experiences, leaving was one of the most difficult things I had to do in my life. I was not worried about my spirituality because that was always an important piece of me, regardless of religious affiliation. However, the community aspect was very important. It helped develop my character and it assisted in overcoming my struggles with mental illness. Well, in the beginning, because it didn't really end that way. The last church I attended, I was a member for about 8 years. I served in the Hispanic ministry, I played the drums on the worship team, and I attended the Latino youth group. Back then, we were segregated, so the Latino kids were not attending the white services. And you might be wondering, Johnny, what do you mean back then? Yeah, you're right. It was in the early 2010s. Kind of crazy, right? The white kids had their pastor, and we had our own leader who was more of a daycare person. Racism was alive and well, but we tried not to acknowledge it. We made an excuse that the language barrier kept us separated, even though we were fluent in both languages. Still, it was something that I ignored until Donald Trump became president in 2016. I was convinced that Republicanism was the Jesus way, because that's what the church told me, even the Hispanic ministry. By this point, the youth groups merged into one, and now I have access to the white members who are vocal about their support towards Trump. And since the beginning of the merge, some leaders were not really happy about it and discriminated against the Latino kids. When I was turning 18 years old, My parents grew closer to obtaining their citizenship, and one of the elders told me it was a great idea that they were finally doing it the right way, so they wouldn't live in sin anymore. I have other countless stories, but after high school, I really just couldn't ignore the racism. It was subtle. Sometimes it was sprinkled in prayers and jokes, and other times they were honest about it. One elder in particular would fantasize about black people infiltrating the church so that he'd have an excuse to use his weapon and protect the members of the church. This type of hatred peaked during 2020, and it was after George Floyd was murdered. At this point, I stepped away because my values no longer aligned with Pentecostalism and the American church. There was racism, sexism, homophobia, and transphobia, but ultimately, there was a specific disgust towards anybody who didn't identify as a Republican. It was polarizing when I realized how flawed the church has always been. How can an institution that preaches about love and empathy become a rally where people can justify their hatred using biblical scripture? Of course, I understand that everything I mentioned is meaningless for some people. Racism? Some might not even give a flying about that. But let's see if you give a flying about PDF files. Before I converted, I attended a Catholic church for the first 10 years of my life. It wasn't anything crazy. I attended Bible school and served as an altar boy, but it was not a right fit. We left Catholicism and eventually converted to Christianity, and that's where I attended my first Pentecostal church. We had to attend 3-hour services 6 days a week. The women couldn't wear pants, men in their 20s were allowed to date preteens, and everybody would be yelling in tongues and casting demons out of each other. This is definitely a perfect place to raise a 10-year-old boy. The pastor himself was the person of interest. He made it known that he was attracted to younger kids around my age, and no one in the church spoke up about it. It was actually celebrated. Every time the services would begin, all the kids and women would make sure to give him a little kiss on the cheek as a way to show appreciation for all that he did. This disgusting pig eventually left the United States, and there was a sense of comfort knowing that he wouldn't inappropriately touch, well, I think you guys know where I'm going with that. But why am I mentioning this? I have 20 years of experience in the church. I've seen it all. Being involved and seeing how corrupt the system can be motivated me to step away and find my truth. I believe my experiences are valid, and this is just a fraction of what I encountered. I've seen my fair share of money laundering, infidelity, assault, abuse, and something that I think Christians should focus on is looking within their own churches and addressing the shit they got going on instead of accusing ex-members of the church of not being faithful enough. I think Christian nationalism is going to get significantly worse in this country. The more uneducated and fearful people become, the more they will sway towards religion. So to DBFY 1849, I have read the Bible, and that's exactly why I left the church.